Hey Roots, today we have our executive pastor, Brian Nieves, delivering a message for our God and Country series. Brian not only serves on the staff team here at Roots, but is also a motivational speaker who is taught all over the world and is passionate, educated, and motivated to helping others break free of self-limiting beliefs and patterns. But as a fierce patriot of America, I couldn't have picked a better person to speak on today's topic, the privilege of freedom. In his 12 years as a House representative and state senator, Brian has seen the political system inside and out. And he's agreed to share with you guys today what politics in America look like and how we can preserve Christian values as we exercise our responsibility as U.S. citizens. So get out your pens and paper, or maybe your smartphone, and get ready for this practical message that you need to hear. So get on your feet and let's welcome Brian Nieves to the stage.
All right. Thank you. That was very nice, but let's get started. So, Austin a minute ago was saying, are you ready for this? And after the 9 o'clock, I was almost hoping that he would tell you a little bit more about what you were saying, yeah, you're ready for, because some of you ain't ready for this. I'm not kidding. Okay, so the timing of this worked out so beautifully. You know that Pastor Jason is out of town. He's gone away with a beautiful woman, happens to be his wife. That's always good. I know I say that every time I speak, but every time I speak is because he's gone somewhere with his wife, and so I just feel like I should tell you that. But as this 12-week session has progressed, the timing of him being away and me getting to speak about this, I was just super excited about it. So we're going to talk about the privilege of freedom, okay? And I'm going to talk about some things today from this pulpit that most of you have never heard in church before. And shame on us as Christians for avoiding this kind of stuff from the pulpit, okay? We're talking about the privilege of freedom. I'm going to tell you, I have studied our founding fathers backwards and forwards. I have studied the founding of this nation. Most of you, I don't know how many of you would know this, but I happen to have served 10 years active duty in the military and then 12 years in our state legislature as a member of the House and then as the senator for this area. And so I've just had a weird life where this stuff is just, I'm very familiar with this stuff. It doesn't make me smarter than anybody. It just means I've just happened to live a life where I've seen a lot of this stuff. And so let's just talk about a couple of things first of all. First of all, why do we call the United States the United States? Well, there's several reasons, but one of them is because before this country was even established, we had the original 13 colonies. You remember that. I hope you remember that. We all know we had the original 13 colonies. Well, those 13 colonies had to, in a lot of ways, unite to be able to defeat the British and make us free. Now, I happen to believe, and I would hope that a lot of you would have this same belief, that the hand of God was directly involved in the birthing of this nation. The hand of God was directly involved in the forming of America. And let me tell you one of the reasons that I believe that. Number one is because the clergy of that day, the pastors, the preachers, the pulpit in that day, they were a driving force in terms of us becoming free, the writing of the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera. But the other thing is, our ragtag group of patriots, the original American patriots, they took up their muskets, they took up what they had, and defeated the most powerful army. They defeated the most powerful nation on earth. The only way that they could have done that, in my opinion, is if the hand of God was directly involved in that. If you look at the math, if you look at whether or not our original American patriots should have been able to beat the British, I'm telling you, it didn't work on paper, right? Just like a lot of times nowadays people say, well, what can we do? What can we do? Well, when there's a ragtag group of people that are committed to making sure that things change or that things become restored, I'm a believer that it can happen. I believe that because the hand of providence, God's hand, was directly involved in the formation of this nation, I believe that as Christians, we should be good stewards of the freedom that God has given us, because most people in the world, you heard Pastor Jason say, I've been very blessed. I've been able to travel literally all over the world. I mean, I've circled the globe over and over and over, been to so many different places, I can't even remember them all. And let me tell you something, ain't nobody got freedom like Americans got freedom. They'll tell you in places like the UK that they have freedom. No, they don't. They'll tell you in Canada that they have freedom. No, they don't. No, they don't. They do not have freedom that even begins to compare to the freedoms that we have in America. And unfortunately, I believe that for far too long, we have not stewarded what God gave us properly. We're too busy being entertained. Do you understand that in the Roman Empire, when things really started going bad, you know what the emperor would do? The emperor would put on the games, right? The emperor would put on entertainment for the people because he knew that all he had to do was entertain the people and the people would fall back in line. Entertainment, fear. Have you ever seen the government use fear to control people? We'll talk about that in just a minute. So eventually the colonies started being referred to as states, and eventually those independent. That's a very important word to understand for what we're talking about right now. Independent states decided to form a national government to handle the very few things that would be better or more efficiently handled by a central or national government. I need to just pause for a second here. A lot of times you will hear the propaganda media and unfortunately even our education system say things like the federal government is superior to the states. And while that is true, it's only true when the federal government is operating inside of the confines of the Constitution. The Constitution, our founding fathers were very clear on this. They wrote about it extensively. Our Constitution was then, and even though we don't really use it this way now, is still now supposed to be a set of chains that holds back the government. Okay? And so, anyway, the individual states gave some of their power over to the federal government, but very, very, very little. You see, they knew, our founding fathers knew firsthand what it was like to be ruled by tyrants. And so what they wanted to do was they wanted to make sure that our new nation would be as free as possible, as long as possible. And they knew that one of the only ways to do that was to limit what government was allowed to do. Our founding fathers were very much in favor of our government being out of our business, our government being small, and our government not controlling our lives. Why? They had just escaped tyranny where every single piece of their life was controlled by the government, and they didn't ever want us to get back to that. Now, they did know that there's power in unity, and that's why, part of the reason why they decided to unify or unite our states, to have united states to form a federal government where they could do certain things that would make sense for a central or federal government to do. They knew they needed to strike a balance between giving the federal government enough power to do what it was supposed to do, but also not give the federal government a single ounce more power than it absolutely needed. They knew that there was power in unity. Now, remember what I said just a second ago. Prior to the formation of the federal government, first there was states. The states gave birth to the federal government. The federal government is a child of the states. One thing I would invite you to think about is human nature in general. Human nature, none of us like to give away any power that we have. None of us like to give away things that we had. Back in those days, each and every state was completely sovereign. Each and every state absolutely made its own decisions, made its own laws, etc., etc., etc. Therefore, when they got the idea of forming a federal government, I just invite you to think about it. Was it likely that they would give up all their power to a central government or a federal government? No, that's not inside of our human nature to do that. So we don't only have to think about human nature itself. We can also look at the writings of our founding fathers. They made it absolutely clear that they were only giving a teeny tiny bit of power to the federal government. That was the way that it was intended. That's the way that it was for very, very long, until we didn't make it stay that way. So our founders, most of whom were Christians, that's another little side note that I'll give you. The propaganda media and even our public education system will try to convince you that our founding fathers were not Christians. That's a bunch of bunk. All you got to do is study them. All you got to do is go look at the writings of our founding fathers. It's absolutely clear that the overwhelming majority of them were Christians. Now, what they do, what the propaganda media and the education system sometimes does, is they'll go through all those founding fathers, like all the people that signed the Constitution. You know that I forget how many. There was a whole bunch of them, right? And they'll find one that maybe wasn't, that much of a Christian, and they'll go, see, they weren't Christians. No, that one might not have been, but the overwhelming majority of our founding fathers, the people that wrote the Constitution, were Christians. They were probably, I'm guessing, they were probably familiar with the biblical account of the Tower of Babel that's found in Genesis 11, okay? Now, I'm going to read this passage to you because I want us to understand that there's power in unity, but that sometimes the power of unity can be taken a little bit too far, as we see what happened in the story of the Tower of Babel. So I'll read that to you. This is from chapter 11. It says, "Now the whole world had one language and one common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, 'Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly.' They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. They then said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we can make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the earth.' But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the people were building. The Lord said, 'If as one people speaking the same language,'" he's referring to unity, "'they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so they will not understand each other.' So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the earth." So the reason I use that biblical account of the power of unity is twofold. Number one, to remind us that there's absolutely power in unity, right? The Bible speaks a lot about, the Bible talks about trying to break a three-chord thing, that unity is powerful. And so number one is to remind us that unity is powerful, but number two is to remind us that when humans create unity that creates power, oftentimes it goes bad. These people, the people in the story of the Tower of Babel, they were operating outside of God's will, and God looked at what they were doing and said, "Whoa, nothing's going to be held back from these people. I better step in and break that unity and separate them." Okay? So our founding fathers understood there was power in unity, but they also understood that there was a danger of giving power to the government, giving power to anybody. And so they were very, very careful about that. The federal government our founding fathers gave us was small and only had power over the states if and only if it operated within the constitutional restrictions that were placed on it by our Constitution. So that goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. People don't like to give up power. Our founding fathers, when they formed a federal government, they were very clear. They said this and only this. One of the things that I used to do when I was the state senator for this area is I would carry stacks and stacks of these pocket constitutions. You may have seen these before. Some of you in here may have even been given one by me years ago. But these pocket constitutions are literally the size of a checkbook, right? Some of you are looking at me funny. You don't even know what a checkbook is, right? Anybody over the age of 40 knows what a checkbook is. Those of you that are younger, you might not know what a checkbook is. But anyway, it's just a small thing, right? Well, these pocket constitutions contained the entire Constitution, the preamble, the Declaration of Independence, and then a lot of commentary about all of it, right? And it was literally, I'm not kidding, it was about this thick and about that big. It was made to put in your pocket. And I would give those to people, and they would say, "Oh, is this the Cliff Notes? Is this the abbreviated version?" I'd say, "No, that's the whole thing." You know why? Our Constitution is small because our government is supposed to be small. But we've let it get bigger than it was ever intended to be. You see, unfortunately, we the people have allowed our federal government to grow way beyond what it was ever intended to do. And when I say we the people, trust me, I'm talking about this guy, right? I'm pointing just as much at myself as I am anybody else. You know why? Because I can only control what I take responsibility for. If I continue to blame the government, I have to remind myself, wait a minute, the government gets voted in by me. If I continue to blame the propaganda media, I have to understand, you know what? If I'm buying from the people who advertise on those propaganda media stations, that's keeping that propaganda media in business, and so whose fault is that? It's mine. You understand what I'm saying? We can only change what we take responsibility for. So although you will hear me complain about politicians, you will hear me complain about the propaganda media. Yeah, I complain about this stuff, but I understand that it is me. I'm the one who has allowed this to get the way it is. So another couple things that I want to clear up before we get into this next subject. You know, a lot of people wonder, well, is the United States, are we a Christian nation? And the fact is, we are not. We are not a Christian nation. We're not a theocracy, right? We are a constitutional republic. But the people who founded this country, the people who wrote the Constitution, were absolutely Christian. The two biggest, this is super easy. Remember, Pastor Jason, throughout this whole entire series, has been saying, fact check me, fact check me, fact check me, fact check me on everything that I say to you today. It won't take much research, I promise. For example, one of the things that you could verify very easily is that the two most influential things as far as the writing of our Constitution, way back then, the two most influential things, one was the pulpit. The clergy of that day, the pastors and preachers of that day, were very outspoken about freedom, about getting away from tyranny. So the pulpit was very, very influential in those days, and the Bible. The Bible was referenced by the people who wrote the Constitution more than any other document. Did you hear what I just said? The Bible was referenced more than any other document by the writers of our Constitution. That doesn't make us a Christian nation. We're not a Christian nation, but we are a nation that is founded on Christian principles and has very, very strong Christian influence. The other thing is, we are not a democracy. I get so irritated by this. I'm not a mad preacher, by the way. This subject just irritates me. Maybe another time in the not too distant future, I'll be able to speak about God's love, and it won't have me in a bad mood. But I hear presidents, both Democrats and Republicans, presidents refer to America as a democracy. I hear the propaganda media call it a democracy. I see our public education system call it a democracy. Our founding fathers, in their writings, some of you are going to find this hard to believe, I promise you it's true, fact check me, said that a democracy would be worse than communism. Our founding fathers said that. They didn't want this to be a democracy. Can I tell you what a democracy is? Some of you have probably heard this example before. Here's what a democracy is. A democracy is when you've got 5 people voting. 5 people voting, or 5 voters, 5 voters. 3 of them are wolves, and 2 of them are lambs. And they're taking a vote on what should be for supper. That's democracy. You understand what I'm saying? In a democracy, the sheer deviancy of man would rule. Does that make sense? That's why they didn't give us a democracy. In fact, they spoke very poorly of a democracy. So we have a government that would be more of a constitutional government. That means that power is exercised by the people who elect the representatives that go and do the things that are bound by the Constitution. You see, the government and all elected officials are supposed to be bound, held back by the Constitution. You could also say that we have a federal system of government, which means that the power is shared between a national government and local governments. And so those are just a couple things I just wanted to clear up real quick. Now I want to get to, we're talking about the privilege of freedom. So I could talk about hundreds of different types of freedoms, but there's 4 that I'm just going to kind of focus on right now. First, we got the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and freedom of assembly. See, these are things that in other countries, even other countries where they claim to have freedom, they do not have absolute freedom of speech. They do not. They do not have absolute freedom of religion, etc. So anyway, these 4, I believe, are very important to us as Americans, and I also know that all 4 of these are very much in jeopardy right now. All we've got to do is look at what happened during COVID, and we can see that these freedoms were either greatly curtailed or completely trampled on. You remember that? Do you remember when the government said, you can't go to church? And what did the American people do? The American people said, okay. I'm proud to tell you, here, we didn't play that. Here, we didn't have rules that you have to wear a mask. If you wanted to wear a mask, it was perfectly okay. But we said the government is not going to tell us how we are going to exercise our freedom of expression in our religious services. And we said, if you want to wear a mask, awesome. Wear a mask, no problem. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask, no problem. Because the government was not going to dictate to us how we were going to handle our worship experiences. And no church in America should have allowed the government to tell them how they were going to conduct their services. I'm glad you agree. I lost about half of the 9 o'clock on that one. Just kidding. No, but we did. Listen, God love them. We did have people that left Roots Church because we were not willing to be the lapdog of the government. You see, the thing is, the right to worship is a right. It is a right. And a right is something that is given to us by God. A right is something that the government cannot give, nor can it take. The only thing that the government can and should do when it comes to rights is to protect our rights. That's it. Not get involved in the exercising of our rights or what we do with our rights. You know, a right... We've even gotten into this time now where the propaganda media and the government will try to tell us that things like, I'm just going to use a controversial example, things like healthcare, abortion, we could go on and on, that these things are rights. No, those aren't rights. Let me tell you what a right is. A right is something that you still have if you are on a deserted island all by yourself. You're the only human being there. If you have it there, it's a right. If it's something that has to be given to you or can be controlled by somebody else, if it's not a right. If I'm on a deserted island all by myself, I still have the right to say whatever I want to say. I've got the right to protect myself. I've got the right to worship God. I've got the right to do things that are actually my rights. and my rights are something that I think my government should protect, not lord over. Does that make sense? I am subject to that authority. So we started out with freedom of speech. Now we have freedom from speech. We started out with freedom of religion, and what our government has perpetrated is did I say of or from? That's the problem when you do two of these, back to back, and then you try to remember what you said and didn't say. So let me say it again. We started with freedom of religion, which means that we can exercise any religion we want. Remember, America is not a Christian nation. America is a place where you are free to express your worship. You are free to be of whatever religion you want. But what the government has done is now they've given us freedom from religion. Our government has systematically removed God from our schools and all public areas. That is not the way our founding fathers set it up. That is not what our founding fathers had in mind. This crap that people say to you about the separation of church and state, fact check me, I'll give you $100, a $100 bill. I don't normally have $100. I do have $100. I'll give you a $100 bill. Show me where in the Constitution it says the words separation of church and state. It does not exist. It does not exist. But we've heard it 1,000,000 times, haven't we? Separation of church and state. Separation of church. You know where separation of church, the only place you'll find that from our historical records is a private letter from our president. I think it was Jefferson. Anyway, it was one of our first few presidents. A private correspondence. He was writing a letter to the Danbury Baptists where he used the expression separation of church and state, and the context clearly that he was using it was to assure the Baptists that the government was not going to infringe on their church. But you know what the propaganda media has done? You know what the Marxists have done over the years? Is they've taken that letter, which has no authority of law anyway, and changed what he was writing and come up with this thing about separation of church and state. It does not exist in our United States Constitution. There is no such thing in the Constitution about separation of church and state. What the Constitution makes clear is that the government will have no authority over how Americans choose to exercise their right to have their faith, to express their faith, etc., etc., etc. We started out with freedom of the press. Now we have censorship. You want to test that one out? Just try to publicly say something that the government has said is misinformation. Let me ask you a question. When did the government get involved, or when did the government get the authority to mandate what is true or false? Now, hold on. Let me make it even better for you. Remember, I served 12 years. I can tell you with absolute certainty, there is no greater source of lies on this planet other than Satan himself. The only person that could compete with the government when it comes to lying is Satan. And then the chief amongst liars, the government, we're going to let the government tell us what's false and true? Does that rub you? I don't know. That rubs me the wrong way. I don't want a liar to tell me what the truth is. Does that make sense? Plus, they don't even have the authority to do that. The government does not have the authority to shut down what I say just because they say it's not true. They don't. But what have we done? Well, we've sat back and we've let them. You know, the government is like a spoiled child. They will do anything that we don't stop them from doing. They will grow their power. They will step outside of their bounds as much as we allow them to do. So I do feel like I need to give you a little bit of a disclaimer because there might be some of you that are brand new to Roots and you're thinking, oh my goodness, is this the stuff you guys taught? No. Listen, this is not the main thing. We just believe that the pulpit in America has been silent on these issues for far too long. So this is not a church where we just talk about this kind of stuff all the time. This is just something that we feel like needs to be talked about, right? Because it never gets talked about from the pulpit. And if Christians would be more aware of how we can influence our government, I believe that we wouldn't be as far down the rat hole as we are right now. So this is not the main thing. It's just something that we're talking about right now. So, a huge part of the fight about what we as Christians can do is to vote, right? I mean, that's like a basic fundamental thing that we as Christians should do. I believe that we have to vote for the candidate and party that best fits our biblical view. Now, today, I'm not going to tell you how you should vote. There's certain things that I can and cannot do from this stage, right? So I don't want anybody to think I'm telling you how you should vote or who you should vote for or what party you should vote for, whatever, okay? We are going to talk about some of the differences between the parties so that we can make better, more informed decisions, right? I mean, we got all kinds of parties in America. At the Reform Party, Libertarian Party, Socialist Party, Natural Law Party, Constitution Party, Green Party, Republican Party, Democrat Party, and there's others. I didn't try to name all of them. But any of these parties can promote candidates in an election. Now, keep in mind, no matter if we're talking about Democrats or Republicans, because we're mostly going to talk about Democrats and Republicans today because those are the two biggest ones. It's likely that typically when we're making a voting decision, we're probably deciding between a Democrat and a Republican, and we only have a very, very short amount of time. So if we keep in mind that no matter if we're talking about Democrats or Republicans, it will always be true that there are two passions which have a powerful influence on the affairs of men: ambition and avarice. Ambition is the love of power. Let me ask you a question. Whether we're talking about Democrats or Republicans, do they both have an insatiable desire for more power? Right? So the desire for power is in both parties. How about this one? Avarice, the love of money. Do they both love money? So what I'm saying is both parties are influenced by ambition and avarice, and that's part of why we need to keep a very, very, very close eye on them. All men, all political parties are affected by ambition and avarice, and that is why we have to follow God more than we would ever follow any type of person or party. Right? So I'm not saying that we should be loyal to some party or anything like that. What I am saying is we need to be aware of what they stand for. And the very best way to do this, I don't have time to go way deep into this today, but the very best way to figure out what these parties stand for is to go directly to their platform. Okay? Don't believe the chirpings of what Republicans say about Democrats. And don't believe the chirpings of what Democrats say about Republicans. I'm always amazed by how people will listen to what the opposing party says about the other one in any situation, right? Also, what Republicans say about Democrats, I don't care. What Democrats say about Republicans, I don't care. I want to look at their platform. I want to see what they say about themselves. Does that make sense? And it's really not that hard to do. In fact, I'm going to give you a resource in just a minute where you can look at a lot of this stuff online and just kind of see for yourself. Now, we are going to talk about some of the differences between Democrats and Republicans. I'm going to approach that carefully by saying this building is in a very Republican state. Missouri is a bright red state. And in a Republican county. Franklin County is bright red. Now, because of that, mathematically speaking, statistically speaking, mathematically speaking, probably it would be likely that most of the people in this room right now, again, I'm not suggesting this, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I'm just saying mathematically speaking, because we're in a bright red state, in a bright red county, probably most of the people in this room are Republican, okay? I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's probably the place where more people would fall, all right? Now, whether you are a Republican or whether you are a Democrat, you ought to, I ought to, we ought to be able to give an account of why we are that thing. And let me tell you an answer that does not work for me. Well, because my family's always been fill in the blank. Yeah, my grandpa was a fill in the blank. No. I'm asking, why are you? Why are you a Republican, or why are you a Democrat? You ought to be able to explain that. It's got nothing to do with heritage. That's like saying, well, how do you know you're a Christian? And you say, well, my mom and dad were Christians. Well, does that mean you're a Christian? Are you personally invested in the shed blood of the Lord Jesus Christ? Are you a Christian? You know what I'm saying? We should always be able to give an account of why it is that we believe what we believe. So I started by going to Merriam-Webster, the Webster's Dictionary. And so this is Webster, which, by the way, is becoming less and less and less reliable because more and more and more of these sources are becoming part of the propaganda media. But let's just see what Webster says about it. It says, Democrats are often thought of as liberal in the sense that they are in favor of government playing a larger role in social affairs. Republicans are often thought of as conservative in the sense that they tend to advocate for smaller government. Okay? So, if one of them is for bigger government and one of them is for smaller government, and you never met me before, you don't know anything about me, but you've heard what I've been saying for the last 20 minutes, and I stand up here and say the Democrats are in favor of bigger government and more government influence, the Republicans are in favor of smaller government and less government influence, I'm going to ask you, just shout it out as loud as you can, which one do you think I probably am, Republican or Democrat? Okay, so is that me telling you that you should be? No, I'm just telling you what I am, okay? I'm also going to help you to understand some ways that you and I can make a decision about which one we would be more affiliated with, because the Bible does tell us to be prepared to give an account of why we believe the things that we believe. In fact, we'll put it up here on the screen, 1 Peter 3:15. 1 Peter 3:15 says we need to be ready. Let me read it to you. It says, but in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for your hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a principle of the Bible. A principle of the Bible that says be prepared to give an account. And when you do that, do it with gentleness and respect. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to make a little bit of a scorecard together. Okay? And we'll do this kind of corporately together. But it'll give us a little bit of an idea of maybe where we individually or even together would fall on the line of, are we more likely to be connected to the Democrats or the Republicans? That doesn't mean that you're going to be some dedicated Republican or some dedicated Democrat, because we're not dedicated to anything other than freedom and giving stewardship to what God has given us, okay? But I do think it's important to understand what the players stand for. And I'm just going to give you first of all, let's just do this first one. On the subject of abortion, are Democrats, generally speaking, and I'll pull the platform up for you if you want me to, but I think you probably know, are Democrats in favor of abortion or against it? Tell me out loud, are they in favor or against? No, louder. In favor, right? It's right in their platform. Absolutely in favor of abortion. Are the Republicans, generally speaking, in favor or against abortion? A little louder. Okay, now, if these guys are for it and these guys are against it on the subject of abortion from a biblical worldview, which one should get the check mark in this example as being the one that would be more biblically aligned? Not that which one is perfect, which one is more biblically aligned? Tell me nice and loud. Okay, so I'm going to put a check mark right there. Now let's talk about abortion for just a second, because I think it's important that we understand that politicians who are asking for your vote are playing on one team or the other. I'm just going to give you a personal thing that irritates the crap out of me. Can I do that? Am I being a little too hard on you today? You guys okay? Y'all hanging in with me? Can I give you a personal pet peeve about politicians? Okay, a personal pet peeve of mine is the Democrat who's asking for your vote and says, I'm Democrat, but I'm pro-life. Can I just tell you why that's a bunch of bull crap? Let me tell you why. When you decide what team you're playing for and you put the jersey of that team on, think about the game of basketball. In the game of basketball, if I say, I'm playing for the Celtics, but I'm going to try to make baskets for the Lakers, does that work? No. Whatever team you sign up for, unless you're an idiot, so the next time you're talking to a Democrat who says they're pro-life or a Republican who says they're in favor of gun control, you know you're either talking to a liar or an idiot. Is that okay that I tell you that? Because if I'm a Republican and if I'm a Republican but I'm in favor of gun control, I'm playing for the wrong team. If I'm a Democrat and I'm pro-life, I'm playing for the wrong team. I got a Celtics jersey on and I'm trying to make baskets for the Lakers. It doesn't make sense. Politicians are not as stupid as they look, okay? When a politician signs the dotted line, when they run for office, they literally have to sign the dotted line of the party that they're running with. And when they sign the line that says Republican, they're signing the line that says they are not in favor of taking your gun rights away. When they sign the line that says they're a Democrat, they are signing the line that says they are in favor of abortion. So when they tell you otherwise, when they say I'm a Republican but, or I'm a Democrat but, you say to them, actually, you're either a liar or you're an idiot. Because that's exactly what they are. There is no in between. They know what they're doing. They know the platform that they signed up for. So don't give me this crap about saying I'm this but that. No. Take the Celtics uniform off if you're going to be putting baskets in the Lakers basket. Does that make sense? You can tell I'm not very nice about this stuff. How about things like sexuality, like supporting the transvestite agenda? Now, let me be very, very careful about this. No, very clear. I am a blood-washed, Bible-believing, flawed Christian. I absolutely believe that every single one of us as Christians should love, and I mean love. I'm not talking about fake whitewashed love. I'm talking about love. We should love the transvestite. You with me on that? We should love the person. But hate, you think I'm going to say hate the sin? No, hate the movement. There's a big difference between the individual who's a bit confused about their sexuality and the movement that's trying to shove it down our throat. So let me ask you a question. Supporting the transvestite movement, are these guys for that or against it? Louder. Are these guys for it or against it? Where should I put the check mark? Some of y'all getting mad at me because your grandma was Democrat and your parents were Democrat, and I'm just showing, how about immigration? Immigration. We've got one party that says, and I can pull their platform, I can pull the platform up anytime you want to so that you can see what they say about themselves, okay? One of them is in favor of opening the borders, and right in their platform says, we want to give citizenship to the millions of undocumented people. I'm just going to tell you. At my house, I get to lock the door when I want to. At your house, you get to lock the door when you want to. You know, most of the politicians that are in favor of open borders and sanctuary cities, you know, they're in favor of all that stuff until it comes to their town. I think we saw that recently when they shipped a bunch of these illegals to these towns that say, no, we love illegals. We're a sanctuary city until they arrived. And they all live in gated communities. Isn't it interesting that the politicians who say that we should have open borders live in gated communities? So let me ask you something. When we're talking about the ability for America to be sovereign and for us to make laws about who should be able to come into the United States and get citizenship and all that kind of stuff, are these guys for expanded immigration? Let's call it expanded immigration just to make it sound nice. Are they in favor of expanded immigration? Are these guys in favor of having our own laws that keep our country sovereign? Where should I put the check mark? How about racism? See, a lot of people don't know this, but it was these guys that eliminated slavery in America. Did you know that? You wouldn't know that if you went to public school or listened to the propaganda media. And when I say something about public school, please understand something. I'm very clear about this on my radio show. I am not talking about classroom teachers. Our classroom teachers are amazing. Our classroom teachers are one of the greatest things that we have in America. The system has failed. The system, not the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher is amazing. The system has failed. So, when it comes to racism, you know, the words Black Lives Matter, those three words, I am absolutely in favor of those three words. You better believe it. Black Lives, yes, I am absolutely in favor of the words Black Lives Matter. I believe Black Lives Matter. Now, how about the movement? Do you know anything about the movement? Have you ever read the internal documents of that movement? They are in favor of Marxism. They are in favor of the elimination of the core family. They are for things that nobody should ever be in favor, whether they're black, white, purple, or with polka dots. So the words, Black Lives Matter, yes, absolutely. But the movement, let me ask you this. Do these guys support the movement? Not the three words, the movement, Black Lives Matter. Yes. Do these guys support the movement of Black Lives Matter? No. How about health care? Is health care, let me ask you a question. Remember we talked about rights before, right? Is health care an actual right? No, it's not. One of these is in favor of what's called universal health care, which means that puts the government absolutely in charge of every aspect of our health care. I don't know when was the last time you went to the DMV or had to get that ID thing that comes from the, anyway, I don't know when the last time you dealt with the government is, but I don't know how crazy I am about the idea of the government controlling everything about my health care, but that's an individual decision, right? So these guys are in favor of universal health care, which means that the government controls all aspects of our health care. These guys are in favor of making it more transparent, incorporate. Did you know that you can't buy health insurance across state lines? And that if you could buy health insurance across state lines, it would drastically reduce the cost of health insurance? Yeah. So anyway, how many of you, just shout real loud, just shout, it doesn't matter what noise you make, if you believe, and it's okay if you do, we're talking about individual decisions, right? If you believe that the government should be totally in control of our health care, just shout. Well, that was good. You said no, but because you made a noise, that meant, according to my instructions, that you were saying, but I think I get what you're saying. How many of you think that the government should stay out of our health care? Religious freedom? We're not even debating this one. National security. How many veterans? Raise your hand if you're a veteran. Raise your hand, veterans. Okay, first of all, thank you for your service. I'm a veteran as well. I also am a veteran, and let me just tell you something as a veteran. It sickens me. It makes me sick at my core to see the military that I served in today with the 4-star panty-waist TV generals that are more concerned with teaching diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're more concerned with teaching our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines how to be sensitive to everything instead of doing what military people are supposed to do. I don't know how many of you veterans agree with me, but this is my viewpoint on the military. The military is not there to be a social experiment where people can learn how to accept everybody from every other walk of life. No, you know what the military is there for? It's to kill people and break things. That's what the military, am I right? We're there to kill people and break things. That's what it's for. It's not about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, not even up for debate. Education. I would be okay if y'all want to. I really would be okay on this one to put the check mark in between. Because I think both want good education. I think they just have very different ways of seeing that happen. So unless you guys are going to revolt, can I just put the check mark in the middle on those two? I mean, I don't know that we have a super clear winner on that one. How about the environment? How many of you believe that global warming is like the existential thing that we should be worried about, focused on, and all, that we should be creating more? Now listen, I like electric cars. I know some of you have electric cars. I love Teslas. They're super fast. They're super fun. If I was going to buy a Tesla, it would be because I think they're fun to drive, not because I think they're more environmentally friendly. Because the batteries that they use in those cars are an environmental nightmare. And the electric grid can't even keep up with if we had more electric cars. But one of these parties, I'm going to let you guess which one it is trying to shove that stuff down our throat. You tell me which of these two parties is trying to shove all that stuff down our throat. Tell me. Okay, see, Brian didn't say it, so don't get mad at me. And then number 10, I saved my favorite for last. Second Amendment. Again, not up for debate. So here's the bottom line. I'm not. With my kids, I have 3 kids that are adults now. When they were little kids, I never told them, I promise you. They ask them, they all go here, right? Ask them if I ever told them what to believe. I never told them what to believe. I said, whatever you're going to believe, I expect you, as your dad, I expect you to be able to explain to me why you believe that. If you want to be Mormon, I will love you just as much as you're a Christian, but you better tell me why you've decided to be a Mormon. If you want to be a Democrat, I will love you just as much as if you were a Republican, but you better be able to tell me why you're a Democrat. You better be able to tell me why you're a Republican. Does that make sense? I believe that we should be able to explain why we are whatever it is that we are. So I'm not advising you. I'm not saying that you should be this, and I'm not saying that you should be this. I simply walked you through an exercise that I think every voter, whether they're Christians or not, every voter should take a look at the things that are the most important to them and then do a scorecard and say, oh, okay, clearly I am on this team. Or clearly, I am on this team. Does that make sense? So nobody up here is telling you how to vote. What we're talking about is understanding why you make whatever decisions you make and then being okay with it. You know what I'm saying? I have Democrat friends. I have tons of Democrat friends. Tons of Democrat friends. When I served in the legislature, if you were to go, Dave Baylor's my chief of staff, he can tell you. If I was out to dinner in the evening, Dave, wasn't it more likely that I'd be sitting there having dinner with a Democrat than a Republican? I got nothing against Democrats. I just don't like when somebody says I'm a Republican and they can't tell me why. Or somebody says I'm a Democrat and they can't tell me why. This is high-stakes poker, ladies and gentlemen. And these people are determining whether we go down the crap hole as a country or whether we rise back up like a phoenix. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal for you and I to think about who we're voting for. I want to show you a video, and just a short video, and then I have just two super quick little closing comments that I want to share with you, and we'll be done for today. If you'll cue that video.
I live in Houston for 22 years. I fled from China, but I cannot show my face because I'm concerned of my family's safety back in China. In that region, you do not have any freedom, you do not have any choice, you don't have a free speech, you don't have a free religions, and we have churches, but those church leaders, they are Communist Party member. If you have a Bible study, which is unauthorized, they consider that's a crime. You can be arrested. And I came to the United States just for not only freedom and all for the American dream and a fair chance. And this country has become more and more like communist. I can see what's happening here now, and which this country is getting divided. That's not what I wanted to see this country become. As American, I think we should wake up now. We should see the big picture of what is coming. We cannot be influenced by the social media and by the media, what they told us. And we have to use our critical thinking to see the truth, to dig a little bit, to spend a little more time and focus on what's going on. As Christian, we also called to stand up, to face the evil, to fight with the devil, and to not be silenced in front of evil. And that's what we're supposed to do as a Christian now.
So in closing, I would just say that, we as Christians have just been a little too complacent. We have not been good stewards of the freedom that God gave us. Because if you believe like I do that the hand of God was directly involved in the birthing of this nation, I mean, just out of curiosity, there's no right or wrong to this. I'm just curious. How many of you would say that you strongly agree with me that the hand of God was involved in the formation of this country? Okay, now, if we believe that, then we have to believe that that's something that God has given us and that we have to steward it just like anything else that God gives us. Freedom is not free, and it's not easy to hold on to. And so we have to be very, very careful about how we do this. I want to give you two little tiny, they're not really homework because nobody's going to collect it, but two things that you could maybe think of as homework, and that is to check out a resource called myfaithvotes.org, myfaithvotes.org. People ask me all the time, hey, how do I know about, what politicians stand for what? myfaithvotes.org will give you a really good, it's a great resource for the kind of stuff we've been talking about today. And the other one is to start doing a little bit more research on the word SageCon, S-A-G-E-Con, SageCon. Pastor's been talking about this, and we're going to be talking more about it as we go. I mean, more than a Republican, I am a SageCon. But as a SageCon, I do these kind of exercises to see who it is that I'm going to vote for. Now, I will also say that I picked 10 hot button items. If I would have picked 20 or 30, what likely would have happened is there would have been a few over here and a few more over here and another one here and a few more over here and, that type of thing. I'm just saying for me, as a SageCon, when I do this, the choice becomes very clear for me. I'm not here to tell you what the choice should be for you. And if you can explain your choice, I'm not going to drill you on it. It's not like I'm going to give you a test. But as long as you know why you're over here, then cool, be over here. As long as you know why you're over here, cool, be over there. But I do think we need to understand why we are whatever it is that we are. So I'm going to, can we just pray and then either, I think Austin's going to come up and close us out. Father, I just want to thank you, God. I want to thank you personally for what you have given us in this great nation. I want to thank you for those that have gone before us and those that have maintained our freedom, sometimes with their own life's blood. Father, I just thank you for this nation. I pray for this nation. I pray for our leaders, even the ones I don't agree with. Father, that we would return to you, that we would return to you, that we would seek your face more than your hand. Ask you to protect us, guide us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I'm coming. Yeah, give it up for Pastor Brian. Thank you, Brian. Man, what a timely word. I'm telling you, I love what he said at the very end, that the reason that this is important is because we have been given something very special. This nation is very special, and it's our job to steward what God has given us. So, guys, we thank you for coming to church this weekend. We hope you have a great week. We have some upcoming events happening. You can head over to myrootschurch.com/events or the Roots Church app anytime. Have a great week. We'll see you then.